Well, steel, as you know, has a great legacy in Pittsburgh and certainly one in Pennsylvania from eastern to western parts. It's really the arsenal of democracy. Steel from Pennsylvania and from Pittsburgh has built the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, parts of the Golden Gate Bridge, the Empire State Building in New York, and of course helped arm the United States to build the steel for ships and tanks during our wars, going back to Civil War and before. But sometimes people say, well, why Pittsburgh? Well, certainly because we had the rivers to transport goods on. We had the rails here. But this is where the coal was. This is where the energy was. And Andrew Carnegie and others knew they could ship in the iron ore, and here's where you had it. And then we know for any industry to grow, you have to have that safe, dependable workforce. You have to have the reliable supply chain. You have to have a fair marketplace, and you have to have innovation. And all those things were part of steel growing here that made it such a strong force for so many decades. And some of it's still made here, but not as much, and for lots of reasons that we're trying to correct. With regard to workforce, we still have a lot of tremendous workers here, whether it's blue collar or white collar. It's the engineers, it's the scientists who innovate all the time to come up with new ideas to make steel better, stronger, faster, less costly. That actually takes a tremendous lot of work, and whether it's U.S. Steel's Research Center or any one of the other steel centers around Pennsylvania, they've always got to be a step ahead of the game, because if they're making it a slower way or less efficient, they can't keep up. Our workforce has aged out and retired, and new workers are needed all the time. They've got to be a lot more sophisticated. You know, the steel worker of today is not the one of 50 years ago. You know, some people are not aware that you can't make steel without coal. It's correct. Like baking a cake without flour. It is an absolutely essential ingredient. Otherwise, all you're doing is making iron, which is not very useful in today's world. So when China now makes as much steel as the rest of the world combined, they've surpassed us all. And in so doing, there's so much out there and floods the market with that, then other countries find that their steel industry is collapsing. For example, the United Kingdom may not be making steel anymore. Now, all that happens over time, the numbers shrink until one country now owns it, and then they can start increasing the price and increasing the control such that you may not be able to afford it anymore, because they say if you want it, you have to buy it from us, and we're raising the price. And this has happened with other products that China and other countries now control, like in the semiconductor industry, etc., where they say with precious metals, unless you buy it from us, unless you buy at this high price, you're not going to get it. And so countries and companies are now at their mercy, and we cannot afford to let that happen in our manufacturing in the United States, or, for example, in our defense industry. Can you imagine if making the steel for a new aircraft carrier or tanks or artillery was now dependent upon China to give us exactly the quality we wanted? That'd be tough. We've consistently sent letters to the president asking him to take action on some of the things that we have passed. In 2015, we passed some very, very important components which gave Department of Commerce some clout, some teeth to fight after this, to go in front of the International Trade Commission. Among them are issues such as the definition of material injury. Before, you could only be shut down before someone says you got hurt. Remember Bethlehem Steel?
Yes.
It's been gone.
Yes.
But this would be, if there are concerns, you don't have to wait till you're shut down. Another one is the facts that are available. Before, that we had to wait for them to give us facts. Now, Department of Commerce can take the most adverse facts available and use that in the case. We can look at issues with regard to how prices are distorted, and we can also deal with the issue called voluntary respondents. Before, we had to rely on other countries to send us the companies. Now, can you imagine if you had 10 companies breaking the law? They say, well, we're not going to have you talk to them. We're going to have you talk to this other one that may not be state-sponsored or breaking the law. Yeah, imagine that. It's like dealing with organized crime and the syndicate saying, you can't interview FBI, any of the people breaking the law, but we're going to give you this kindly young lady, and she's going to be the one you talk to. Who's got nothing to do with it. That's just wrong. They may seem obvious, but we had to pass these to make them work. Now it is making sure the Treasury and Commerce and our United States government goes at this strongly and consistently.